How was your Victory Monday going, Dolphins fans? Welcome to the Fins Up Network. It's Ben Morgan. And I've got a quick one today because we recently heard from Mike McDaniel at his media availability on Monday afternoon, and we got some news. Terron Armstead, as you know, we're all kind of broken up about the injury that he suffered Sunday against the Texans. And everything was pretty much confirmed that it's a pectoral strain. Nothing believed to be torn, nothing believed to be season ending. The hope is that he can return at some point in December. Now, he is going to be seeing a specialist to kind of determine what kind of different treatments there are going to be. But one of the reporters asked him, is it possible he's going to be available within the next 2 to 3 weeks? Because we all know what those 2 to 3 weeks are and what they mean to this team. It's at San Francisco. It's at the Chargers. It's at the Bills. It's 3 important games against 3 teams that are vying for playoff spots. So obviously there was a little bit of hint as to why they were asking about that. And Mike McDaniel seemed fairly optimistic. I think his quote was, "I wouldn't put it past him." So it's not season ending, at least that we're hoping so far. But it does look like it's going to be at least this 1 week, potentially a couple weeks, with the hope of him being back in the next couple of weeks. But it's not done from there because we got the latest from Austin Jackson as well, who left Sunday's game with an ankle injury. And yes, it was the same exact ankle injury that forced him to miss every single game after the week 1 game up until this week against the Houston Texans. But according to Mike McDaniel, it was a different type of injury. So I'm not a doctor. I think if you got a right ankle, that's bad. You got a right ankle, that's bad. But apparently it is a new issue. So Mike McDaniel said he's going to be doing a lot of rehab. He's going to be spending a lot of time with the trainers this week, which you kind of read between the lines. It seems very doubtful for the 49ers game. So let's look at what we've got. Some options against the 49ers, Sunday's opponent. So basically, we're getting thin. When you're losing guys like this, when Liam Eichenberg is already on the shelf, you're getting thin. So that leaves us basically with Brandon Shell and Greg Little. And my thought would be that you get Brandon Shell and you put him back to right tackle. And likely that means left tackle is going to be Greg Little, because we saw Brandon Shell fill in at left tackle once Terron Armstead got hurt against the Texans. The team, he didn't necessarily do this. His performance wasn't great by any means, but the team allowed 4 sacks over the stretch of 10 plays once Armstead went out. You watch that game, you know exactly what I'm talking about. The offense went to hell once Terron Armstead left that game. But we know Brandon Shell, his performance at right tackle earlier this year was much better. He had 5 starts prior to last week's game when Austin Jackson got the spot back at right tackle. Brandon Shell wasn't credited with allowing a sack in any of those 5 games. So I would assume he will be back at right tackle, which leaves Greg Little at left tackle. And we have seen Greg Little play left tackle earlier this season. And if you remember that game against the Vikings, it didn't go very well. He was credited with allowing 3 sacks and 11 pressures, which I don't have to tell you, that is statistically one of the worst games we've had from an offensive lineman this year. So no, the options aren't great. It's not a great time of the season for this to be happening because the great D that we're going to face, which we're going to get to here in a second. But before we do, I want to talk about the new guy in town, because the Dolphins added Kendall Lamm to the practice squad. So I had to do a little bit of research on Lamm since I didn't really have much on him, as you would expect. But he's from Appalachian State. He was an undrafted free agent back in 2015. He's got 86 career games played in the NFL, 28 of them being starts. Last year, he was a backup for the Tennessee Titans. He's 30 years old. So he had 13 starts for the Houston Texans back in 2018. However, since then, very limited playing time, only 4 starts since then for the Browns and for the Titans. And if you look at his snap distribution between left tackle and right tackle, he's played about 3 times as many snaps at right tackle as he had at left tackle. So there'd be a possibility that maybe he gets called up for the game on Sunday, but I would say that there's probably other practice squad guys that are more likely to get called up over Lamm. And I say that basically because Keon Smith on our practice squad has been called up earlier this year. So I would say he's most likely. So I'm going to finish this with that next opponent. And I said I'm not going to talk too much about it. But the biggest reason all of this is as big of a deal and it's super important right now is because we got the 49ers on deck here and how dominant that defense has been and how dominant has been and how dominant their pass rushing has been as well. Like I said, I'm going to get into more depth about this 49ers defense as we preview them throughout the week. But real quick, I found these numbers to be just fascinating. They haven't allowed, this 49ers defense hasn't allowed a second half point over the last 4 weeks. For the entire season, they rank first defensively in points allowed per game, rushing yards allowed per game, yards allowed per rush, first downs allowed per game, and overall passing touchdowns. Oh, and Nick Bosa is third in the NFL with 11 and a half sacks. So yeah, the injuries right now to Austin Jackson and Terron Armstead are magnified to a crazy extent because we were already thin on the line, and then you lose a top 3, in my opinion, left tackle in the game, which kind of makes the offensive line go. Like I said, that game against against the Texans, we see him go out. We literally see the offense just get shut down. And thank God we had that lead, because who knows how that game would have played out if we would have had to have been consistently trying to score on all those offensive possessions when we were essentially just going 3 and out from then on. But that's a quick one for today, Dolphins fans. Like I said, I will be back, I think, tomorrow, if everything goes as scheduled, with my weekly stock up, stock down for your Miami Dolphins. But that is my time for today, Dolphins fans. Enjoy the rest of your Victory Monday, and fins up.